The heavy brass cufflink felt cold and alien in my palm. It wasn't mine. I didn't own anything like it. Too ornate, too expensive-looking, a small sapphire glinting dully under the weak light filtering through the bedroom blinds. I'd found it nestled deep in the corner pocket of the travel duffel bag Carla used for her work trips, tucked away beneath a forgotten pair of socks. My fingers closed around it, the edges pressing into my skin. A tremor started in my hand, a slow vibration that threatened to spread through my entire body. 22 years. We'd been married for 22 years. We had built a life, brick by painstaking brick. The house, the kids, now mostly grown and starting their own lives, the comfortable routines, the shared history that felt as solid and reliable as the oak tree in our front yard. Carla and I, we were the steady couple, the ones friends pointed to as proof that marriage could endure, that love could deepen with time, weathering storms and settling into a comfortable, reliable rhythm. But this cufflink, it didn't belong in that rhythm. It was a discordant note, sharp and jarring. I stood there in the quiet of our bedroom, the scent of her perfume lingering faintly in the air, the indentation of her head still visible on the pillow beside mine. My mind scrambled, desperately trying to construct an innocent explanation. A gift she'd bought for her brother, something picked up by mistake at a conference, a stray item from the hotel laundry. Each possibility felt flimsy, transparent. My gut, that deep instinctual part of me I'd learned to trust over 50-odd years, clenched hard. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't accidental. This felt deliberate, hidden. Why else would it be shoved so deep into a corner pocket beneath old socks in a bag she hadn't used since her trip to Chicago 3 weeks ago? I sank onto the edge of the bed, the mattress dipping under my weight. The silence of the house pressed in, amplifying the frantic thudding in my chest. Carla was downstairs, humming softly as she made coffee, the familiar sounds of our Saturday morning routine drifting up the stairs. Usually those sounds were comforting, the backdrop to a life I cherished. Now they felt like a soundtrack to a betrayal I couldn't yet fully comprehend. Who did it belong to? The question echoed in the sudden emptiness inside me. When? How often? The thoughts tumbled over each other, a confusing cascade of fear and dawning realization. Was this why she'd seemed distant lately? More protective of her phone? Why those work trips sometimes felt off? I had dismissed my occasional unease, chalking it up to the stress of her demanding job, to the natural ebb and flow of a long marriage. Had I been blind, willfully ignorant? The metal felt colder now, heavier. It wasn't just a cufflink, it was a symbol, a tangible piece of evidence that threatened to shatter the foundation of everything I believed to be true. I thought about her smile, the way she looked at me across the dinner table, the easy intimacy we shared, built over decades. Was any of it real? Or had I been living alongside a stranger, oblivious to the cracks forming beneath the surface of our carefully constructed life? My hand tightened around the small object until my knuckles turned white. The humming downstairs stopped. Footsteps started on the stairs. Panic seized me. I quickly shoved the cufflink deep into my own pocket, the cold metal pressing against my thigh like a brand. I stood up, forcing my face into a semblance of neutrality, trying to breathe normally as the bedroom door opened. "David, coffee's ready," Carla said, her smile warm, familiar. Too familiar. My heart hammered against my ribs. Looking at her, at the woman I had loved for more than half my life, felt like looking through fractured glass. Everything seemed distorted, wrong. I managed a nod, a tight smile that felt brittle, ready to crack. "Coming," I said, my voice sounding hollow, distant even to my own ears. As I followed her down the stairs, the weight in my pocket felt impossibly heavy, pulling me down into a reality I wasn't prepared to face. The coffee tasted bitter, metallic. I watched Carla move around the kitchen, her familiar grace now seeming like a performance. She chatted about her upcoming week, meetings, deadlines, a potential dinner with colleagues on Thursday. Each word, once mundane, now landed like a tiny stone thrown against glass. Colleagues? Which ones? Did one of them wear sapphire cufflinks? The question burned in my throat, unspoken. "You're quiet this morning," she observed, turning from the counter with 2 mugs. She handed one to me, her fingers brushing mine. The casual touch, something I wouldn't have registered yesterday, now felt electric, wrong. I pulled my hand back a fraction too quickly. "Just thinking," I mumbled, mirroring her earlier words. I took a large gulp of the too-hot coffee, letting the heat scald my tongue. A wee. She studied me for a moment, a slight furrow in her brow. "Everything okay?" "Fine, just tired." The lie felt clumsy, ill-fitting. She didn't press, turning her attention to the newspaper spread on the table. But I saw the flicker in her eyes, not suspicion, perhaps, but awareness. Awareness that something was off. Did she think I suspected, or was she just registering my mood? The uncertainty was maddening. The rest of the morning passed in a haze of forced normalcy. I tried to engage, to follow the rhythm of our usual Saturday, discussing plans for the garden, sorting through the mail, the low hum of the television in the background. But my mind was elsewhere, constantly circling back to the cold weight in my pocket. Every time Carla laughed at something on TV, a knot tightened in my stomach. Every time her phone buzzed softly on the counter, my head snapped towards it, my muscles tensing. She picked it up once, glanced at the screen, and quickly typed a reply, a small, almost imperceptible smile playing on her lips. Who was she texting? What was so amusing? Years of trust had eroded in a matter of hours, replaced by a corrosive suspicion that colored every interaction. I found myself watching her hands, her expressions, searching for clues, for confirmation of the betrayal I now felt certain had occurred. Later, while she was showering, the urge became overwhelming. Her phone lay on the nightstand. My heart pounded. Just pick it up. Check the messages. The thought was a siren call, promising answers, promising an end to this agonizing uncertainty. My hand hovered over the smooth glass screen. I could see my own reflection, distorted and pale. But I couldn't do it. It felt like crossing a line, becoming someone I didn't recognize, a spy in my own home, violating the privacy we had always respected. And what if I found nothing? Would that ease my mind, or just fuel the paranoia, making me believe she was simply better at hiding things? What if I found something? Was I ready for that? Ready to see the words, the names, the proof that would irrevocably shatter our life? I snatched my hand back as if burned, the cufflink in my pocket suddenly feeling heavier. No, if I was going to face this, I needed to do it directly. Sneaking around felt cowardly, beneath the man I thought I was, the husband I had tried to be. I spent the afternoon in the garage, sanding down an old bookshelf I planned to refinish. The rhythmic scrape of sandpaper against wood was usually calming, meditative. Today, it did little to soothe the turmoil inside. My mind kept replaying moments from the past few months, searching for missed signals. The late nights she attributed to work, the sudden increased attention to her appearance, the way she sometimes seemed emotionally distant, even when sitting right beside me. Had the signs been there all along and I'd simply refused to see them? We'd hit rough patches before. Midlife crises, job stresses, the strain of raising teenagers. We'd always talked things through, found our way back to each other. I remembered one particularly difficult year, about a decade ago, when my own business was struggling. She had been my rock, unwavering in her support, her belief in me never faltering. "We're a team, David," she'd said, squeezing my hand. "We'll get through this together." Had that team dissolved without me realizing it? Had I become complacent, taking her loyalty, our stability, for granted? Or was this something else entirely, a failing not of attention, but of character? Her character. The thought felt like another betrayal, this time originating from me. But the cufflink, it wouldn't let me dismiss the possibility. It demanded an explanation. As dusk began to settle, casting long shadows across the cluttered workbench, I stopped sanding. The wood dust coated my hands, my clothes. I stared down at the half-finished bookshelf, its raw grain exposed. Building things, fixing things, that was what I did. But how could I fix this? Could trust, once broken so fundamentally, ever be truly repaired? Carla called me in for dinner. Walking back into the house felt like entering a stage set. Everything looked the same. The familiar furniture, the photos on the mantelpiece capturing happier times, the scent of roasted chicken filling the air. But the atmosphere was thick with unspoken tension, at least for me. Dinner was quiet. I pushed food around my plate, my appetite gone. Carla made small talk, recounting an anecdote about a colleague named Sophia from the approved name list, apparently someone new in her department. I listened, nodding numbly, the name barely registering beyond its source. My mind was on the cufflink, on the conversation I knew I had to have. When? How? What words could possibly bridge the abyss that had opened between us? After dinner, she settled onto the sofa with a book. I watched her from the armchair opposite, the lamp beside her casting a warm glow on her face. She looked peaceful, absorbed. Deceptively so? I couldn't tell. The woman I had known intimately for decades suddenly felt like an enigma. The cufflink pressed against my thigh. It felt like a timer, counting down the moments until detonation. I had to know. I couldn't keep living in this suffocating silence, this state of suspended animation where every glance, every word, felt loaded with potential meaning I couldn't decipher. I opened my mouth, the words forming silently first. "Carla, I found something." My heart hammered. My palms felt slick. She looked up from her book, sensing my gaze, a question in her eyes. This was it. The moment had arrived, whether I was ready or not. "Carla," I began, my voice hoarse, unsteady. "We need to talk." Her expression shifted, the easy calm vanishing, replaced by a careful guardedness. She slowly closed her book, placing it on the cushion beside her. "Okay," she said, her voice quiet, neutral. "What about?" The cufflink felt like burning coal in my pocket. I reached in, my fingers closing around the cold, hard shape. This was real. This was happening. My life, the one I knew, was about to end. I pulled my hand out, ready to lay the evidence, the betrayal, bare on the coffee table between us. The weight of 22 years hung heavy in the air. I took a breath, steadying myself. My hand trembled as I placed the cufflink on the smooth, dark wood of the coffee table. It sat there between us, small and innocuous, yet radiating a destructive energy that sucked the air from the room. The tiny sapphire caught the lamplight, winking like a malevolent eye. Carla stared at it. Her face, usually so expressive, went completely blank for a beat, a mask snapping into place. Then confusion flickered across her features, quickly followed by something else. Recognition. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but I saw it. A tightening around her eyes, a slight intake of breath she tried to disguise as a sigh. "What's this?" she asked, her voice a carefully constructed wall of nonchalance. She didn't reach for it. "I found it," I said, my own voice low, strained. "In your travel bag, the one you took to Chicago." Silence stretched, thick and suffocating. She looked from the cufflink back to my face, her gaze searching mine. What was she looking for? Guilt? Confirmation? An escape route? "It must have gotten mixed up with my things at the hotel laundry," she offered, the explanation sounding rehearsed even as she said it. "You know how those places are." I shook my head slowly, the movement feeling heavy, weary. "No, Carla, it was tucked deep in the corner pocket, underneath socks. It wasn't mixed up. It was hidden." Her facade began to crack. A flush crept up her neck, staining her cheeks. "David, you're imagining things. It's just a cufflink." "Whose is it?" The question hung there, raw and unavoidable. She averted her eyes, looking down at her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I don't know." "How would I know? It's probably just some cheap thing someone lost." "It's not cheap," I stated flatly, "and you recognized it. I saw it in your eyes." Her head snapped back up, defensiveness flashing. "Don't tell me what I did or didn't recognize. Why are you doing this? Accusing me?" "Because this," I tapped the cufflink, the metal cold against my fingertip, "doesn't belong in our life. Because you've been distant. Because you hide your phone. Because things haven't felt right for months. And I kept telling myself I was wrong, that I was just stressed or tired, but I wasn't, was I?" The words tumbled out, fueled by weeks of suppressed anxiety and the sudden stark certainty of betrayal. Tears welled in her eyes, but they looked like tears of frustration, not remorse. "I can't believe you're accusing me of that. After 22 years. Do you really think so little of me? Of us?" "What am I supposed to think, Carla?" My voice rose slightly, laced with the pain I could no longer contain. "I find another man's cufflink hidden in your bag after weeks of feeling like something is fundamentally broken between us. Tell me what I'm supposed to think." She stood up abruptly, pacing the small space between the sofa and the fireplace. "My job is demanding. I travel, I have dinners, I have meetings. Sometimes things get stressful, yes. Does that automatically mean I'm cheating?" "Does it?" I shot back, standing to face her. "Does it involve expensive cufflinks being hidden away? Does it involve secretive texts and late nights you can't quite explain?" She stopped pacing, turning to face me, her expression hardening. Maybe I haven't been entirely honest about how stressful work has been." "Is his name Stress?" I asked, the sarcasm bitter on my tongue. "Does Stress wear sapphire cufflinks?" Carla flinched. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. The fight seemed to drain out of her, replaced by a weary resignation. She sank back onto the sofa, avoiding my eyes. "David," she began, her voice barely a whisper, "it's complicated." Complicated. The word landed like a lead weight in my stomach. It wasn't a denial. It was a confirmation wrapped in evasion. The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. 22 years, crumbling into dust around a single inadequate word. "How complicated?" I asked, my voice hollow. I felt strangely detached, like I was watching this scene unfold from a great distance. She shook her head, tears finally spilling over, tracing paths down her cheeks. "I didn't mean for it to happen." The classic line, the cliché uttered by countless unfaithful spouses throughout history. It offered no comfort, no explanation, only underscored the banality of the betrayal. "Who is he?" I needed a name. I needed to put a face to the ghost who had been haunting my marriage. She hesitated, twisting her hands together. "It doesn't matter." "It matters to me," I insisted, the detachment shattering, raw anger surging through me. "Who is he, Carla?" She wouldn't look at me. She stared fixedly at the cufflink still sitting on the table, as if it held the answers she couldn't bring herself to voice. The silence pulsed. My heart felt like it was splintering in my chest. The life we built, the trust, the shared history, it all felt contaminated now, poisoned by this secret, this complication. I waited, the seconds stretching into an eternity. The reflection in the dark television screen showed two people standing in a familiar room, suddenly strangers to each other. The cufflink gleamed. Carla finally looked up, her eyes red-rimmed, filled with a confusing mix of regret and something I couldn't quite decipher. Was it fear? Defiance? "His name," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "His name," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "is Chad." Chad. The name hit me like a physical blow. Chad. Not some anonymous stranger, but Chad Peterson, a senior executive in her company, a man I'd met a handful of times at corporate events over the years. Tall, confident, always impeccably dressed. I could suddenly picture him wearing cufflinks exactly like the one sitting between us. He was married too. I remembered meeting his wife, Sarah, a quiet woman who seemed overshadowed by his booming personality. The betrayal twisted deeper, becoming sharper, more personal. It wasn't just an affair, it was with someone I knew, someone who had shaken my hand, smiled politely while sleeping with my wife. The image of them together, laughing at a company dinner, sharing a cab, disappearing into a hotel room, flashed through my mind, nauseatingly vivid. "Chad Peterson?" I clarified, my voice dangerously quiet. Carla nodded, unable to meet my gaze. She looked small, diminished, huddled on the sofa. "How long?" The question felt like dragging stones across gravel. "David, please." "How long?" I repeated, each word clipped, precise. She swallowed hard. "On and off, for about a year." A year. 12 months of lies, 12 months of stolen moments, hidden texts, fabricated business trips. 12 months where I had lived in blissful ignorance while my wife shared intimacy, emotional, physical, with another man. A colleague. Someone whose hand I had shaken. The room felt like it was closing in. I couldn't breathe properly. The carefully constructed walls of my life, the life I thought I knew, were collapsing inwards, crushing me beneath the weight of her deception. Why? It was the hardest question, the one I almost didn't want the answer to. What was so wrong with me, with us, that she had sought comfort, excitement, whatever it was, elsewhere? She shook her head, tears streaming freely now. I don't know. Things have been difficult, distant. You travel, I travel. We barely see each other sometimes. And Chad, he paid attention. He listened. Excuses, flimsy justifications that did nothing to excuse the fundamental breach of trust, the shattering of vows we had made 22 years ago. So, you decided the solution was to sleep with a married colleague? The bitterness was sharp. Instead of talking to me, instead of telling me you felt distant, instead of trying to fix what you thought was broken. I tried, she cried, looking up at me pleadingly. I tried to talk to you, but you were always busy, stressed about work. Don't, I cut her off, holding up a hand. Don't put this on me, Carla. Don't you dare try to twist this into my fault. You made a choice, a series of choices. Every day for a year, you chose to lie to me, to betray us. The anger was a physical force now, churning in my gut, making my hands clench and unclench at my sides. I wanted to shout, to break something, to lash out at the unbearable pain she had inflicted. But beneath the anger, there was a vast, hollow emptiness, a profound sense of loss that was even more devastating. The woman I loved, the woman I had built my entire adult life with, was capable of this. This calculated, long-term deception. The foundation of everything I believed in had turned to sand. I looked around the room, our living room, filled with memories. The armchair where I read stories to the kids when they were small. The mantelpiece cluttered with photos of family vacations, anniversaries, graduations. Every object felt tainted now, monuments to a life that had been revealed as a lie. What now? I asked, the question hanging heavy and unanswered. What could possibly come next? Could we repair this? Did I even want to? The thought of forgiving her, of trying to rebuild trust from these ashes, felt impossible, almost insulting. Carla sniffled, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. I ended it with Chad a few weeks ago, before you found... She gestured vaguely towards the cufflink. I realized it was a mistake, a terrible mistake. I want us, David. I want to fix this. She ended it, not out of loyalty to me perhaps, but because the affair had run its course? Or maybe she sensed discovery was imminent. The timing felt too convenient. And did it even matter? The damage was done. The trust was gone. I stared at her, trying to see the woman I married beneath the wreckage of her confession. Could I ever look at her again without seeing Chad Peterson standing beside her? Could I ever touch her without imagining his hands on her? Could I ever believe her again? The cufflink sat on the table, a silent testament to the chasm that now separated us. I couldn't stay in this room, couldn't breathe this contaminated air any longer. Without another word, I turned and walked towards the door. "David, where are you going?" Carla called after me, panic rising in her voice. "David, wait! Let's talk about this." Her pleas followed me out into the cool night air. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't be there, couldn't be near her. The street lights cast long, distorted shadows on the pavement. My footsteps echoed in the quiet street. The cufflink was still in my pocket, a cold reminder. 22 years. Gone. The emptiness inside felt vast, cold, and utterly absolute. My future, once so clear, was now a terrifying blank. The cold night air did nothing to cool the burning inside my chest. I walked for hours, not really knowing or caring where I was going. The familiar streets of our neighborhood felt alien, hostile. Each house, with its warmly lit windows, seemed to mock me, showcasing the domestic peace I no longer possessed. My mind reeled, replaying Carla's confession, the look on her face, the name, Chad Peterson. Each repetition was like turning a knife in an already deep wound. A year. She had looked me in the eye, kissed me goodnight, shared meals with me, planned holidays with me, all while carrying on a secret life. How could I have missed it? Were the signs truly there, ignored by my own complacency, or was she just that adept at deception? The latter seemed more chilling. The idea that the person I knew best in the world could wear such a convincing mask, maintain such a profound lie for so long, shook my faith in everything. I found myself on a bench overlooking the small duck pond in the local park. The water was dark and still, reflecting the scattered streetlights like broken pieces of glass. It felt fitting. My life, reflected back at me in fractured pieces. Could we fix this? Carla had asked to fix this. She said she'd ended it. But how could we? Trust wasn't like a broken plate you could glue back together. The cracks would always be there, visible fault lines running through the foundation of everything. Every time she was late, every time her phone buzzed, every time she traveled for work, the suspicion would be there, poisoning whatever remained between us. And forgiveness? The word felt abstract, distant. How could I forgive the obliteration of 22 years of shared history? How could I forgive the image of her with him, an image now seared into my brain? Forgiveness seemed like a concession I wasn't capable of making. Not now, maybe not ever. It felt like saying what she did was acceptable on some level, and it wasn't. It was a fundamental betrayal of everything we had supposedly built. The kids. What about them? They were older now, mostly out of the house, but this would devastate them. Their image of their parents, of their stable family unit, would be shattered. How could we tell them? How could she face them? The thought of their pain added another layer to my own anguish. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the cufflink again. It felt less potent now, its initial shock value replaced by a dull, aching reality. It was just an object, a catalyst. The real damage wasn't the affair itself, necessarily, but the lies, the constant calculated deception, the knowledge that the life I had cherished was, in many ways, a carefully constructed illusion. A cold breeze ruffled the surface of the pond. I watched the distorted reflections shiver and break apart. What was left? A house filled with ghosts? A marriage built on ruins? A future I couldn't begin to imagine? I thought of Carla's face as she confessed, the tears, the pleas. Was there genuine remorse there? Or just the desperation of being caught? Right now, it didn't matter. The injury was too deep, too raw. The path forward was shrouded in fog, thick and impenetrable. The park was deserted now, the silence broken only by the distant hum of traffic. I sat there for a long time, the cold seeping into my bones, mirroring the chill in my soul. The cufflink grew heavy in my hand. 22 years reduced to this, a small, cold piece of metal, and an ache so profound it felt like it might swallow me whole. My phone buzzed in my pocket, probably her. I ignored it. There were no words left, nothing she could say that could bridge the chasm she had opened. The only thing I felt with certainty was the crushing weight of the silence, inside and out. It felt like the end of everything. The emptiness was vast, echoing,